Ready for all this. I thought we were going to warm up into a show. Here we are, straight to New Year's, all day long.
Can I bring all of this back home to the kids?
Yes, you can have more.
I
Absolutely.
love it.
Matter of fact, you can take it right now.
Get more for her. We need lots more.
There's a lot of kids.
For the Duffy clan.
I bet this thing.
Oh, man.
There we go.
Fun.
That's what I'm talking about.
There we go. Yeah, I mean, I walked in. The streets are already blocked here in New York.
It was hard to get to work, wasn't it?
You can't get anywhere.
Well,
No.
we talked a little yesterday. I almost preemptively gave my resolution. I didn't get the memo that we weren't supposed to talk about resolutions until today. But we did ask some of our viewers for resolutions, and we're going to start with those. This one's from Donna. My 2024 New Year's resolution is to eat dinner with my family at least twice per week at the table. No phones or TV. That is an awesome resolution.
That's a really good one.
I love that.
Very
it's practical too, and it's doable.
Because you can get stuck eating at the counter or whatever you're going to do. Like, no, we're doing dinner over here. Everything's going off. And then we might talk to each other.
And a lot of people, because of all the sports going on with kids, they're just, doing takeout. So this is you have to be intentional, and that's an intentional
it's a good one
that'll help your family.
All right, here's one from Cassie. She said, my resolution is to read the whole Bible.
Do we just have the nicest viewers? What's going on?
I like it. That's
awesome.
I think some of them got filtered out. We kept the good ones. That's
some of the less biblical ones.
Yes.
So
I love that one.
This one from Jeff. He says, in 2015, I resolved to lose 116 pounds. It took 2 years. I've now kept the weight off for 7 years. My 2023 resolution is to build a weight loss coaching business and publish the story I've written. I love it, man. Listen, congratulations. It's not about how you look. It's about how you feel. It's about being healthy. You know what? If you got kids or family, it's about being around for them. It's not easy, man. It's not easy at all, and I applaud you for it. And, share the gospel of it, of how you were able to do it.
What a great that's somebody I'd take advice from as far as losing weight. 116 pounds, doing it the right way over several years.
But it's not just how you feel, Joey, too. Obviously, it's how you look, too.
It is how you look, isn't it? Yeah. If you don't believe me, ask the Marine Corps. They'll put people that are in great shape on a weight loss program because they don't make tape. So.
Well, that's true. A little outdated system.
It is how you look.
How big is your neck? That's how they measure you in the military.
So you might have some of our viewers might have more resolutions you want to share with us. Be sure to do that. You can email us at friends@foxnews.com.
Friends@foxnews.com. I never really understood why our emails changed to fox.com, but the Friends account never changed, and it's still friends@foxnews.com. Can someone from IT explain that to me?
I'm just not even following.
Okay. Your email ends with @fox.com.
Yeah.
But the Friends email is @foxnews.com.
I don't know.
Because they want to filter it out so it gets to them quickly. So they're like, this is viewer mail.
That sounds
just viewer mail.
wrong.
My email ends at Gmail, so I don't even know what you're talking about.
It's true. Would you like to give it out? So people can. Okay.
No.
Well, we're glad you're here. It's going to be a fun 4 hours, and we got a little news to get to as well, starting with this. 2024 promising to be a busy year for former President Trump as he fights to keep his name, just keep his name on the ballot.
Just to run.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Never mind trying to win. Meanwhile, Maine Secretary of State becoming the latest victim of a swatting call just one day moving to take Trump's off the state ballot.
Yep. So Alexandria Hoff, she's live in our nation's capital. She's going to explain this to us. Alexandria?
Yeah, that's right. So this is a primary election where the courts are playing a colossal role. Yesterday, the Justice Department's Jack Smith filed an argument with the U.S. District Court here in D.C. disputing that former President Trump is immune from charges related to election interference. Smith wrote this, quote, immunity from criminal prosecution would be particularly dangerous, whereas here the former president is alleged to have engaged in criminal conduct aimed at overturning the results of an election. And last week, the U.S. Supreme Court declined to fast-track Trump's claim of immunity. That sent it back to the appeals court where it is now. And it was considered to be a win for the Trump legal team as it could push the case beyond the 2024 election. But a delay seems to be a no-win in the separate case of Colorado's ruling that disqualifies Trump from the GOP primary ballot. The High Court has been asked to move quickly on that to clarify if Trump's name should be printed.
No matter what the court does, whether it declines to take the case, decides to take the case, I just urge them to do it quickly. I certify the names of who is on the ballot next Friday for the presidential primary.
Yeah, and last week, Maine became the second state to rule that the former president is not eligible to run. That's based on a Civil War era provision in the Constitution. The decision was made unilaterally by Maine's Secretary of State, Shenna Bellows, who now says she has become a victim of swatting because of it. That's when police are inappropriately called to your home. Most likely, there's a report of a shooting. Of course, one didn't happen there, but it causes a lot of chaos. And earlier statements made by Bellows are also surfacing, where she expressed interesting views on the electoral process as a whole. She wrote this in an op-ed back in 2021. Quote, "It shouldn't be easier to vote in Maine than Montana. Voting rights for our neighbors matter as much as our own, especially when the relic of white supremacy that is the Electoral College remains in place." So with her ruling, the Electoral College has been kind of launched into chaos here. We're waiting for the Supreme Court to weigh in. And right now, Republicans in the House and Senate, they are working on bills to penalize states that seek to bar Trump from the 2024 ballot. There are currently 13 with lawsuits to do just that. Guys.
Wow. Thank you, Alexandria.
Thank you, Alexandria. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
You know, when you call the Electoral College a relic of white supremacy, I think you're an activist. You're not a public servant.
No, you're crazy, is what I say.
I also think you just don't like the country. Then
Yeah.
you would just say all of America is just a relic of white supremacy.
It's
Scrap the whole
By the way, she got swatted. I'm going to take a bet right now that the FBI finds her swatter.
Oh, yeah.
But not the 8 that swatted
Much more.
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Or Jonathan Turley.
Or Jonathan Turley.
Much more likely they find out
Yeah.
who that is. Well, to the point of all of this, there's how it plays out in actuality. There's how it plays out politically. And someone just weighed in, pretty interesting. Former Obama advisor David Axelrod says if this actually happened, if they actually prevented Trump from running, which I don't think is going to happen, but they're trying pretty hard, it would rip the country apart. Watch.
He's only gained since he started getting indicted. What you thought might be kryptonite for him has turned out to be battery packs. And this is a big one for him. Presumably the Supreme Court will deal with it fairly quickly. And I expect that they will leave him on the ballot. I do think it would rip the country apart if he were actually prevented from running, because tens of millions of people want to vote for him. I think if you're going to beat Donald Trump, you're going to probably have to do it at the polls.
Yeah, in that,
true.
I was trying to find the quote inside of what he said, but he said, the plan is not working. You're going to have to beat him at the polls, which to me shows this was a plan. And by the way, they're trying to play it both ways. David Axelrod, is a mouthpiece for Barack Obama. And this, get Trump off the ballot, basically launch nuclear lawfare against him. That is entirely a concocted plan by the Democrat Party, of which Obama and Axelrod are leaders. So, yeah, he's kind of talking about how it's a bummer it's not working.
It's a good point. So this is a nice fallback plan of it didn't work, so...
All right, guess we're going to have to beat him at the ballot box, or the country's going to get ripped apart. They don't believe they don't care if they rip the country apart. If they cared about ripping the country apart, they wouldn't have launched, which Obama did, Russiagate and everything else they've done to him.
Well, and they've already ripped apart the ballot box, too, through what happened under COVID and all the ways in which they changed how we vote. So they're counting on that, too.
Yeah.
And some states like Georgia responded to that, passing a law just to make the elections as fair in rural areas as it is in metropolitan areas. And, of course, that ended up being Jim Crow 2.0, Pete. I mean, despite the fact a record number of people registered and voted in the election since then, that was Jim Crow 2.0, simply by making sure that the Georgia elections were fair, equal, and accessible. So does this plan work? It may not work in keeping him off the ballot, but it's absolutely working in spreading resources thin. When you have GOP parties in Colorado having to spend all their time and attention just to get Trump on the ballot, they're not getting voters registered, they're not informing, they're not doing what they need to do to get people to the polls to vote. And so maybe it's working in ways even more nefarious than we see.
Yeah.
On election night, we're going to have states like Florida, states like Georgia, where we're going to get returns. I keep
hopefully no water pipes bust or
at 3 a.m.
At 3 a.m. That's true. Oh, that'll happen. Let's move to California, where there's always chaos. And there's a new law in 2024, signed into law by Gavin Newsom, which basically nullifies the Second Amendment. Now, there was a ruling in the Supreme Court this year on New York's carry conceal, which has led to a lot of people having the ability in New York to get a carry conceal permit who never had the opportunity before. Well, California doesn't care, and they passed a law that effectively makes it illegal to carry anywhere, including even if you own a restaurant. If there are members of the public that come into the restaurant, you can't carry. A appeals court upheld this law, and we'll see if it ends up going to the Supreme Court. But here's what Governor Newsom said as the appeals court upheld his terrible law. This ruling will allow our common sense gun laws to remain in place while we appeal the district court's dangerous ruling. Californians overwhelmingly support efforts to ensure that places like hospitals, libraries, and children's playgrounds remain safe and free from guns. So it's in the middle of the courts. It's being contested all over the place, but they're hoping they can uphold it.
How many hospitals, libraries, and children's playgrounds has someone, as a law-abiding citizen, gone through the hoops that it takes in California to legally carry a weapon? How many times have someone law-abiding, legally carrying a weapon, passed every background check and extensive vetting possible, have they used a gun unlawfully at a hospital, library, or school playground? I would venture to say that the answer is pretty close to zero. And the reason why I point that out is these laws aren't about making things safer. They're not about preventing bad actors. This law is not about access to guns for criminals. It's about red meat for a certain group of people. It's about putting something on the table that really has little effect on the safety of society in order to pander to a group of people that don't know anything about guns or how guns do or don't help or hurt society, but need something. They need something to beat up on. They need something to draw a line in the sand and say, I dare you to step over it. That's what these moves are about. And we should see through that. We should see that Gavin Newsom doesn't care about the safety of his people. You go to San Francisco, you can see that, but he does care about finding something, just something to throw some red meat on the table and disenfranchising the Second Amendment while he's doing it.
Well, the craziness in California doesn't end there. Now the LA Public Health Department is saying party responsible this New Year's by carrying naloxone. How do you say that?
No, don't ask me to pronounce things. I'm the worst pronouncer in the world. Naloxone?
Naloxone. And using fentanyl test strips.
So don't.
That's right.
So don't
carry a gun.
Take drugs. Just test them first.
Is
that what the tweet means?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Here's what Bill Melugin.
This might be the best tweet of 2023.
It
and
really
there's been a
is
lot.
good. It's good. This is Bill Melugin. He says LA Public Health had the strictest COVID mandates in the country, shut off comments on their social media, and they used taxpayer money to pay millions in no-bid contracts to PR firms for their messaging, which was amongst the worst in the country, and is still led by Barbara Ferrer, an unelected non-medical doctor who has a PhD in social welfare and decides the mandates for a county of 10 million people, which once included forcing restaurants to turn their TVs off during the pandemic and being the first county in the country to ban outdoor dining without a shred of medical evidence to support such a move. So the woman putting out the party safely with naloxone and fentanyl strips is the same lady who doesn't have a medical degree, but had a lot of crazy mandates for the poor Californians out there.
And apparently, I'm being told that this is because there's an uptick of COVID cases in hospitals in California. So ramp it up. Here we go. Happy New Year. You know what I was at? My wife and I went to the circus yesterday. Do you know there's a circus?
Yeah, well, in New York?
Yeah, Gwen's, our daughter wanted. It was.
Are you talking about like a block this
the
way or
Rockettes
like a real
or the circus? No, like a real circus.
Okay.
Yeah, everything around here is a real circus.
I would have totally picked the Rockettes.
She picked the circus. So we went to Lincoln Center. It's like up near Columbus Circle, and there's a tent. And you go in, it's like an old school, like 50s circus, except there's no animals because they banned the animals. So it's a bunch of human tricks. But you get in there, and I'm telling you, 30% of the people were masked up.
Really?
Yes.
Real quick,
and I'm like, what are we doing here?
In a New York circus, does the bearded lady identify as a man or a woman? I'm just curious.
Well, the whole city's a freak show, so they don't need you don't need that.
In a circus.
All right. Well,
The circus
otherwise
is right outside this building.
Yes.
listen, we're gonna wrap that up, and we're gonna turn now to your headlines, starting with a Fox News alert, or 13 and 1. Yeah. Anyway, they're the best.
Keep going.
They're the absolute best. They were beat by the Crimson Tide, who may or may not beat Michigan here in just a few hours. So anyway,
I mean, Rachel, you can get it 63-6 or 63-3. Not good.
Yeah, that's a
pretty
basketball
dominant.
score and a soccer score on a football field.
Right?
Honestly, I completely tuned
She
it
blacked out. While you were doing that. She totally blacked out.
Started thinking about
Congratulations.
taking out the meat for tonight. I was thinking about
She's thinking about dinner. We've really been talking about thinking
All
about
you
those
need to
steaks.
know is go Dogs. That's all you need to know.
Go Dogs.
Well, they can't go very far because they didn't make the playoffs. All right, coming up, as a new illegal caravan heads right for our southern border, critics are issuing dire warnings about the repercussions, that's a big word to say at 6 a.m., that Europe has seen in the wake of unchecked illegal immigration, including a major jump in sexual assaults committed by refugees. We'll talk to a journalist who covered the crisis extensively next.
And still ahead, claiming your luggage with an AirTag. One Florida family tracks their stolen luggage with the help of Apple, and that family's going to join us ahead.
In the new year, not only to hang on to the White House, but key Senate seats. This morning, we're breaking down the state of the race in 5 contests that will likely determine the balance of power in the upper chamber. Fox News contributor David Webb joins us now with his insight. Good morning, David.
Morning, Joey.
I've got 5 names in 5 states, and I want you to break them down for me and let me know where we are. If the Republicans can win them, if Democrats are going to hang on, or perhaps an independent. First, we'll talk about Joe Manchin. This is the biggest story, probably, the fact that he not only is retiring from the Senate, but maybe looking at poking at a presidential run. What do you see happening there in West Virginia? You've got a Democrat candidate, Zach Shrewsbury, but your Republican candidates, Jim Justice, Alexander Mooney, Christopher Rose, and Zane Lawhorn. Pretty contested field there.
It's a pretty contested field for the Republicans in the primary, and they need to get their act together there. But look, Jim Justice is an example of what happened in West Virginia. You know, West Virginia voters and values, and that I see going to the Republicans. They have a strong field, but my caveat to the Republicans, Joey, always get in the room, get your act together, because you need to combine and win.
I'll tell you, whatever happens with Joe Manchin, he was a very parochial senator. So there were a lot of things that West Virginians continue to reward, even as they got more red. When we look over to Montana, we have to remember there's a Montana beyond, the places that you see on TV, I guess. And so John Tester is the incumbent there. He's a Democrat. But he's going to have to challenge Tim Sheehy, Jeremy McGland, and Thomas Madigan. Is there a chance for a Republican to bring it forward and unseat an incumbent there in Montana?
I think that is the one that goes likely Republican. I have those likely Republican seats, and that's because of the voters. You've got a smaller base to draw from. Republicans have been building a good game legislatively. They've gained the trust of the voters. And, at times Tester kind of feigns being a Republican.
Yeah.
It's being effective for him, but I don't think it works this time, and I think that one goes Republican.
Yeah, we've talked about 2 Democrat senators in solidly red states. Now let's talk about some in states that have gone red recently, could go red this year. We're talking about Sherrod Brown, a Democrat incumbent there in Ohio. Of course, we saw J.D. Vance come, kind of flip on his support for Donald Trump and win a Senate seat there. What do you see happening in this race as several Republicans look to unseat him?
Yeah, I would love to say Republicans look strong when you look at the fact that they control supermajorities in both houses in the state legislature. They've got a weak governor in Mike DeWine. Look at what just happened with the transgender bill. Republicans in Ohio seem to want to find a way to lose. And unfortunately, I don't think this one is a likely Republican. I think this one's the toss-up of the states we're talking about.
Well, the next state is very similar to Ohio in the sense of it could go red, and it certainly could decide the presidential election. Is Pennsylvania. A lot of blue-collar but union workers there. And you've got a race here. You got Democrat candidates, Bob Casey, who's the incumbent, and so we have some Republicans there looking to challenge as well. What do you see happening there?
When it comes to Pennsylvania, the numbers matter here, Joey. The Republicans are down 446,000, I'm going to round out the numbers, in registered voters versus Democrats. There are over 950,000 other affiliations, some other small parties. Republicans do not have a voter advantage in Pennsylvania, and while the switches have been trending towards them, how do you overcome 446,000 plus versus the Democrats. I think that one's going to stay a Democrat. Bob Casey knows how to run in Pennsylvania. Republicans, again, I'm a fan of the primary system as you are. I want our people to make their votes known. But Republicans need to be big boys and girls, get in the room when it's time to pull the candidates together and say, look, you've run your race, but right now we need to win the race.
Absolutely. That last one's Kyrsten Sinema there in Arizona. That's probably worthy of a segment of its own, so we'll leave it here. David, you can leave us on a cliffhanger to see what your prediction is there. Thank you for joining us, brother, and we'll see you soon.
Happy New Year.
All right, coming up, nearly 6 and 10. I'm very excited about that.
I hope you're at a hotel close and not going anywhere else.
I'm at a hotel close enough that I can hear the chaos, but not have to
be a part of it.
Yeah.
The Minnesota Vikings are playing the Packers tonight.
You indicated he's spoken to folks.
Jen is not pleased about that. She does not want to spend watching. It's consequential games to Vikings and Packers.
Okay.
Yes, it could have playoff implications.
Especially the track threat.
We're going to watch that on the side and then just enjoy it.
Will you be in Nashville for that?
We'll be home. Yep, chilling. You'll be home, right?
Now I know I'd probably be watching the Packers, too. Think about that until you read it.
I'm sorry. Sean Duffy will be watching on the other side of the equation.
That's the only time he really insists on watching is if the Packers are playing.
Yep, and they're playing the Vikings now, and I think it's at Lambeau Field. He'll be into it.
It's going to be
the
a
night is
Packer
done.
night. Yeah, the night's done.
It is.
We started the first hour with our New Year's resolutions from our audience, but now we've got one from Joe Biden. He says his New Year's resolution is, well, let's see.
What's your New Year's resolution, sir? Next year. Anything else?
That's the biggest one right now.
Now is the second state to remove former President Trump from the 2024
we don't know if he
primary
means back
ballot.
to St. Croix for
NBC
New
News
Year
Capitol
or
Hill
back to
correspondent Ryan Nobles explains yesterday's ruling by the
back to the
Secretary of
White
State
House,
in
maybe?
Maine. And now,
it's an odd thing
Back
to
to the
say.
White House. Yeah, it could be back to that restaurant, that fancy restaurant he was at.
Back
It could
to
be
his-
anything.
Back
It
to his
really
nap. Oh, nobody knows. And that's the point. And a lot of people are really critical of the fact that he's on vacation in St. Croix at this luxury home of a billionaire anyway. Because as you know, we have hot spots all over the country, all over the world that we wish he was, at the helm, taking charge of, and especially at our border. I want to show you this map here.
Look at his face.
It's true.
It's like you're the oldest guy you know in your neighborhood, like just yelling at you. Anyway, sorry, Rich.
No. I think that image has a lot to do with this image. Just this feeling that nobody's in charge. That they've unleashed this policy on us, and maybe it's not going the way they want. Maybe it's too much, but they don't seem to care. Look at this: 286,000 migrant encounters since December 1st, 770,000 migrant encounters since October 1st. That's 83,500 known gotaways, and. Look at those states there.
Those are some records there.
Oh, yeah, no question about it. And the total number of reported encounters are greater than the population of those 15 states. So this is going to have...
That's staggering.
It's staggering, and I think it's really hard to think about just how this is going to have an impact well into the future. I mean, social services are already strained, but these people are going nowhere. They will be here permanently. I don't think anyone's going to deport them.
No.
And so what does that mean for your school, your hospital, your taxes?
Unless Donald Trump wins and puts in the administration he says he will, which they say, hey, we will deport these people.
It's a lot of people to deport.
And it would be a massive backlash, but you would have the legal standing to do so, and you need to have the chutzpah to do so. But we just can't, to your point, Rachel, you just can't sustain that many people, and you got a year longer of this. Joe, you mentioned it. Those are record numbers. So those numbers we showed were basically based on a month, the first one, 286,000 in a month, and then a quarter, 800,000 in a quarter, and these are the known gotaways, let alone the ones we don't know about. I mean, these
known gotaways is such a misleading nomenclature for something. So what does known gotaways mean? Does it mean these are the amount of people we saw on a camera but didn't intercept? or is it a prediction of what they think the total people that came across the border they didn't intercept were? I don't care about known gotaways. I want to know about unknown gotaways. How many people are coming across the border that we have no interaction with, that are coming here freely? And that number is speculative at best. It's probably huge, and it really tells the rest of the story. I mean, the Biden administration has taken this crazy notice to appear piece of paper, and if you hand that to someone and say, hey, we've documented that you came here illegally, you're asking for asylum, we can't make that determination right now, so we're going to let you on in. Just please come back in 2 to 4 years, and we'll have a court case and figure it out. That makes, through the Biden administration, that makes their presence in this country legal-ish. That gives them documentation, actually, of why the Biden administration is allowing them to be here, although they came here completely illegally and have no proven claim to be here.
So, you know, Joey, first of all, by the end of this Joe Biden's term, I believe we're going to have about 10 million people who will have come into this country illegally. That's a massive number of people, especially if you think about that these are people with, you know, low skills, not a lot of education, and we don't know who they are and what's going on. Yesterday, I had a guest on that I interviewed on this show, and he was I want to, maybe our producers can remember his name. But in any case, he said, listen, this is no longer, in my opinion, I can't figure out what the end game is. I used to think it was about votes, that they were importing, potential Democrat future voters. But he said, this is so much bigger than that. I would say so much more coordinated.
As the Giants won the toss and deferred to the Cowboys.
Like the World Economic Forum, the UN, the Soros-funded NGOs, and many of these other countries. So the end game to me is a borderless world. It is about collapsing our system. In fact, that guest said, I have to believe this is about destroying our country because there's no other explanation for it. The future voters thing doesn't work anymore. It doesn't make sense anymore.
Which would mean looking at the pictures of Joe Biden on vacation giving a nonsense New Year's Eve resolution. It's not that he's incompetent; it's that he's party to it.
Yeah,
he's party. I mean, he's willing to see that destruction under his watch and do nothing about it. And that's what Representative Randy Weber, Republican from Texas. He gave a quote to Fox News Digital about this contrast. And he said, President Biden's dereliction of duty is on full display while he sits on the beach and ignores the thousands of illegal immigrants invading our country daily. America, as we know it, will be unrecognizable unless this administration comes to the table, starts enforcing the laws, and stops the flow of illegal immigrants, which, of course, they won't, which is why the election will be such a referendum on, the economy, on this issue, and then, of course, everything the left wants to make it about, too.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and if we're not upset about the border, then we need to look at what we have going on as Americans in this country and what we're going to do for our kids. We've got a survey that finds nearly half of the companies in the country plan to remove a bachelor's degree as a job requirement in 2024. And so what does that mean? That means that this, 2 generations of telling your kids go to Harvard and get a liberal studies or a gender studies degree is the way to success. Maybe that's not true anymore. Maybe companies don't value degrees from places where indoctrination is put above education.
That's right. 45% of companies now plan to eliminate bachelor's degrees as a requirement. It's interesting. We had the guy on earlier from Ramsey Solutions. And he talked about coming out as a young man out of college and trying to start life with $40,000 in debt. I came out with about $30,000 in debt, and I had scholarships on top of it, So imagine that. My husband came out of law school and undergraduate with almost $100,000 in debt. And I think it's really interesting that the wokeness and the indoctrination and the silly degrees that you talk about, that I think people are catching on, that this is a scam, and that those graduates that apply for jobs aren't really all that much more qualified than somebody without a degree. And so I think this is actually a positive thing.
It's a sad development and a great development. Yeah. It's sad because these once hallowed institutions, just the idea of better your life by being the first in your family to go to college or do this, it was part of the American story and the American dream. I mean, I remember my parents were so proud of the fact that they were the first of their family to go to a college.
Yeah.
Because that was something. Now it's like it's sad in that sense, but it's fantastic because the scales have fallen off our eyes.
Yeah.
That is what you need. And now business, I think this is the necessary next step. It's not just a recognition that these are woke nonsense universities. It's businesses saying, we don't want these employees, which is why this survey of 70,000 small business owners is so significant. So 91% of these small business owners say colleges are not graduating students with the relevant skills that today's business community needs. 91%?
2 out of 3 strongly disagree with the notion that colleges are teaching relevant skills. Here's Mike Rowe on that, on the decline of the American work ethic. Listen.
Work ethic used to be a virtue. And by that, I mean it was a thing that was completely apolitical. Work ethic was a thing we all aspired to because we all knew in our guts that it could help us. Today, that turn of phrase has become, like so many other turns of phrase, a kind of triggering dog whistle of sorts. It means that if you come out in favor of work ethic, then you are de facto on the side of the greedy, rapacious capitalists who are merely trying to exploit the worker. The truth is, a positive work ethic can help anyone, employer, employee, doesn't matter.
You know, you don't need to go to college to have a good work ethic. I mean, that's absolutely true. But I'm not going to undermine what I think could happen if you go to a great university that is steeping you in information and also in great books and opening your mind. I mean, that's the kind of education that our founding fathers had, and that produced the kind of things that we love, like our Constitution. There's something about their education that, you know, created these documents that have, you know, transformed the world. But that said, I was surprised to hear how many students today, even now, are doing their classes via Zoom.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
It's the social aspect. Because you can't learn to take a punch verbally or any other way unless you're around people. Like, you can't learn to have your feelings hurt and have enough confidence in yourself and your abilities for that not to be something that defines you or gets to your core. Someone to walk in class, at a young lady walking to class. I went to Georgetown. I actually got a liberal studies major, but I got some education in the Marine Corps before that, thank God. And I took what was the path of least resistance for me is what I was doing. I still have my bandages on. But she came in and she said something disparaging to me because I was a veteran and I had help with my tuition. Didn't matter that school cost me a leg and a leg. It was that I didn't have to go, you know, pay every dollar of my tuition. If I were as fragile as some of these folks seem to be, that might have destroyed me, I guess. But I just laughed it off because I knew what she didn't. But she didn't know everything about me and my situation and how my school was paid for or anything like that. And the reason why I bring that up is education is vitally important. Education through experience, mentorship, apprenticeship, and in the classroom. Very important. That's not exactly what you're purchasing with a 4-year degree anymore. And I think really what it does, puts a spotlight right back on public school. How many kids are graduating the 12th grade and not getting the robust education they got 20, 30 years ago with a semester of shop class, a semester of automotive mechanics, or simply, like, you know, I don't know, being taught not to be one of these Gen Zers that ends up in credit card debt. Education is not necessarily indoctrination, and if there are schools that are still focused on education, tout them. Technical colleges, maybe. I want my son to go learn the skill set.
Yeah, absolutely. You said exactly what I was thinking, that the extent to which K through 12 has devolved into meaningless knowledge.
A lot about this.
No, it really has. So then colleges are supposed to pick up the slack, except they've become indoctrination factories. So find a K through 12 school that fortifies your kids in a way that they can be prepared for the world way better than a terrible K through 12 school and then a woke college education. You can do it in 12 years. You can do it in K through 12. A lot of our founders didn't go to college because they were steeped in big ideas and great books. A lot of them did, and that's wonderful. But we used to educate younger kids on bigger ideas than we do today. We dumb it down, we treat them, we simplify everything. It's possible. But hey, I'm grappling with this right now. What do I want to do with my kids going to college? Right now, it's a no, and except for a few places. And I think it has to fit the kid.
Well, I was going to say, right? I have 9 kids. I have right now 3 that are of college age. 1 graduated, 1 in college, and 1 went for a semester and said, "This isn't for me. I'm not getting the value I want out of it." And that's the choice he made. I think 10 years ago, I would have freaked out. But seeing what's being taught in so many schools today, I think he's going to be fine.
I'm sure.
And this polling tells me he's going to get a job.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
91% of small businesses are looking for him.
That's right.
Love it. All right, let's turn now to a few additional headlines, starting with this. Catholic Leaders Survey of America's top conservative and free market leaders making waves this morning, ranking the most overrated and underrated political figures in U.S. history. And some of the answers might surprise you a bit. Committee to Unleash Prosperity conducted that survey. Its co-founder, Steve Moore, joins us now to break it down. Steve, when I first saw this survey, I thought that's a good idea, interesting, because we have views of certain figures in our mind. But let's ask a bunch of prominent, conservatives and historians and others what they think. What did you find, Steve?
Right. Well, Pete, thanks for having me, by the way, and Happy New Year.
Of course, Happy New Year.
The reason we did this is because if you look at the standard surveys of historians, and let's face it, historians tend to be very liberal. We know that from the universities that you were talking about earlier on the show. They have a very distorted view, and they always rank, Pete, the president's and the political figures who expand government the most and increase its cost and increase its powers. And we as conservatives feel like, wait a minute, the great political leaders are the ones who give us more freedom. And so we asked about 125 leading conservative voices from around the country who they would pick. And by the way, just to be clear, this was who's overrated and underrated, not necessarily the best. Are you ready for some of the results?
Yes, please. Drum roll.
Okay. So do you want to start with over or under?
Let's go over the most overrated political figures in history.
Well, this is one of my favorites, and this was close, but the one who came out on top was Keep Cool with Calvin Coolidge from the 1920s, who gave us the Roaring '20s.
The most underrated.
Underrated, yes, and he was an amazing president. We had a booming economy, cut taxes, and was highly effective as a leader. And by the way, if he had been run for re-election in 1928, we probably would have never had the Great Depression. And so he was on top. But here are the other two that were very close behind him. Are you ready for this? Ronald Reagan and Donald J. Trump.
Very interesting. So most underrated. You're right. There's been a resurgence of an understanding of how what a good president Calvin Coolidge was. The Trump and Reagan don't surprise you. How about I'm surprised a little bit to see Bill Clinton there as underrated.
Yeah, he came in, I think, 4th or 5th on the list. And I think it's because, if you look at Bill Clinton, this is not about his personal behavior, right? This is about what he did when he was president. His first 2 years as president were a disaster. But then when Republicans took Congress, he moved to the middle. And think about this, Pete. We got 3 or 4 balanced budgets, the only president in the last 60 years who's balanced the budget. We had a capital gains tax cut. We had welfare reform. He was actually a pretty effective president and a booming stock market. And I think that's the reason that he was rated underrated. Yeah.
Interesting. All right, the most overrated political figures now, Steve.
Now, Pete, this wasn't even close, okay? I was shocked. It was not close. By far, the most overrated was Barack Obama. And I think it's because so many people are disappointed with his presidency. We were all proud of the fact as Americans that we had elected the first black president in history, but his policies were very catastrophic for the presidency. For the country. We had a really weak economy throughout his 8 years as president. He didn't do a lot to help black Americans. When you think about it, he didn't promote things like school choice and other policies that would have really helped black Americans. And I think that's one of the reasons he was rated by far the most overrated, because right now, if you look at his historians, they're saying he's one of the 6 greatest presidents we ever had.
I believe that. By the way, it's great to see the other two on the list also, Steve. FDR and Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson effectively destroyed the country in starting so much the progressive era. And FDR just expanded government massively, and so he's often on the top of the list. But your folks put him properly where he should, is overrated. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, let me just say one thing about FDR and Woodrow Wilson. And they massively expand government. Roosevelt is, in my opinion, the most overrated because he extended the Great Depression, which could have been just a 1 year, 2 year financial crisis. It lasted another 10 years. How does that make him a great president? I never understood that.
That's a great point. And you're an economist, so you do understand it.
Yeah.
Steve
By the
Miller,
way, P, you never told me who would have been your choice.
I think it matched pretty close. You didn't ask me to be a part of the survey, so I didn't get a chance to weigh in. But
yes,
maybe
we
next
did. Okay.
You got it, Steve. Thank you. I think it would match what your experts found. You're spot on. Good stuff. Happy New Year. All right, still ahead. 2023 proving to be a rough year for America's beer market, with Americans drinking less of it than any other year this century.
This stat really surprised me. It's leading the decline in sales was Anheuser-Busch, no surprise there, as it faced boycotts over its Bud Light partnership with transgender activist Dylan Mulvaney.
Our next guest called this deal a big mistake. Former Anheuser-Busch executive Anson Fredericks joins us now. You call it a big mistake. Tell us why it's a big mistake.
Well, good morning. And if you recall that beer sales might be down, but that's really just a Bud Light issue. If you take a look at it, beer sales at Miller Lite, Coors Light, Yuengling, Modelo, they're way up for the year. And one of the problems that you obviously had with Bud Light this year was obviously the Dylan Mulvaney partnership, but the bigger issue has been the response. Bud Light's done a lot since that Dylan Mulvaney partnership. They tripled their marketing spend over the summer. They did partnerships with Peyton Manning this fall. They just signed a $100 million contract with the UFC and Dana White, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. The one thing that they haven't done is they haven't gone back to their customers, who they called fratty and out of touch, and just apologized that they first off called those consumers those terms. And then secondarily, they haven't gone out and said, hey, Bud Light moving forward is just going to get back to football, get back to doing sports, back to backyard barbecues. Those are things that people want. And they can spend all the money they want. But until they do that, I don't see these sales turning around anytime soon.
Yeah, why haven't they done that? Because I look at Peyton Manning with a beer in his hand, with a Bud Light in his hand, and I think more about why is Peyton Manning doing that than I do about Bud Light. Like, why haven't they taken those steps?
I don't think they've taken those steps right now. You know, unfortunately, the company's been captured by some of its largest shareholders, people like BlackRock. BlackRock's the largest asset management company in the country. BlackRock is one of the leading companies that pushes this environmental, social, governance agenda that tells companies that they're owners of that they have to get involved in these divisive social, political issues. And they're doing that because a lot of the money that BlackRock manages, it comes from California. It comes from New York. So unfortunately, I think that Anheuser-Busch is scared of BlackRock and is scared of its largest shareholders. And unfortunately, they need to take really who their real shareholders are. It's not necessarily BlackRock. It's all the folks that watch this show. It's everyday Americans who their 401ks and their retirement savings are managed, that are investors that are counting on Bud Light to actually get it right and get their marketing right, get humor back, get beer sales back, because that's what's going to pay for their retirement, and not necessarily worry about some of these large asset managers like BlackRock that are theoretically managing their money.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you brought up BlackRock, because I think that's a big part of the whole ESG push and why Bud Light did this. But, you know, when I first saw this stat, I just thought, I knew Bud Light was part of it, but I just imagined people were maybe not buying Bud Light. Now they're going to buy Miller, or they're going to buy, you know, some other beer brand. I also think there's a lot of people just trying to, you know, have lower carbs in their, less carbs in their diet. I mean, how much of it is part of that?
So there's definitely part of that. If you take a look at folks right now, yes, they're drinking less, but also they're choosing other brands like spirits, like wine, who've done a better job of premiumizing sort of the image of those brands. But also there's other interesting non-alcoholic options that are kind of taking the place of beer occasions. There's a great brand, I'm not sure if you're familiar with something called Liquid Death, for example. It's a water company that is put into a metal can. It's marketed a lot like beer. It's humorous. It frankly has a lot of the humorous ads that Bud Light used to have in their old marketing. And they're stealing a lot of occasions from beer companies as well. So there's a lot of things that are going on that are not just Bud Light in this industry, but more the broader beer category has got to get back to elevating the image of beer. It's got to get back to humor. It's got to get back to fun. That's what was doing a really good job of driving this business for years. And unfortunately, they've lost a lot of that over the last couple of years.
Anson, some industries have recognized that this going woke thing's not working out well for them. The tech sector has seen a big drop in job-related postings for DEI, down 44% in 2023 from 2022. So do you think companies will eventually realize this is not only is it not helping our bottom line to do this whole woke thing, but it's actually hurting us?
And really, I think there's two reasons for this, but I think the pendulum will swing back. The first one's a legal reason. If you remember earlier this year, you had the Supreme Court that they had a case against Harvard University.
Yeah.
Harvard University, they were using affirmative action policies to effectively discriminate against Asian applicants by putting quota systems and limiting the number of Asian applicants and Asian students that would be admitted to Harvard. This was ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court and overturned. So by default, a lot of these corporations used similar affirmative action programs to limit the number of Asian people, white people at these companies. And by default, these are now illegal as well. So you're going to see a lot of the pendulum swinging back. These programs aren't working. But then more importantly, these programs, they just weren't popular at companies. At the end of the day, most people and most employees, they want to be judged on merit.
Yeah,
they want to be hired on
that's
merit.
exactly right. How crazy is it to want to live and exist in a meritocracy where you can earn it yourself? Anson Fredericks, thanks for joining us. My family left beer, but they went towards these like truly seltzer water things. So I don't know. We'll see how they enjoy that.
Well, you're saying that.
Thank you, Anson.
All right, take care.
Thanks, Anson.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
All right, still ahead, we're counting down to 2024 with Rick Ragmuth, the chief meteorologist he is. A live report from Times Square coming up.
And safety, of course, top of mind for tonight's festivities. Retired NYPD Inspector Paul Morrow breaks down what you